151.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like a B flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My name is Maddie Ulrich, and I'm the costume designer for...
Hi, my name's Annie Saunders, and I am creating the rec with
And
the
I'm
team.
Julian Limita, and I am the set designer and costume designer.
I'm actually a visual artist in a performing arts.
I'm Kate Fry, and I'm the sonographer.
My name is
for
Missy
the rec.
Mazzoli, and I'm the composer.
I'm
for
Royce
the-
Fabric, and I am the librettist
And I
for
really
the
just
opera
love the
Proving Up.
heightened high art quality of it. It's really
The
great.
capacity for invention.
I'll be designing the costumes and the space, the environment.
When you're dealing with a living
in
composer and all
collaboration
these
with the
living
team.
collaborators, no wonder opera is viewed as this art form where everything meets.
Nah. And I'm like, I didn't think about like my voice being recorded and then I shouldn't be like hacking up a lung.
No, I'm like, I have to be careful because my nose has been running because of the cold, so I'm like, I can't be sniffing the whole
Right,
time.
well we'll just own it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
you
negative
know, it's
3.
negative 3 degrees here, so if we can't talk, that's why.
Yeah. I realized in all my other ones I never said what my name was, so no one knows that I'm like the host. But yeah, I'm the host, Lily Snortland. I'm here with Shelby VanNordstrand. Usually I start with just the why and what you do. And you can reverse the order, but sometimes people's why comes before their what. So
Sure. Why and what? Well, I guess, you know, the what is I'm a singer, I'm a musician, I'm an educator. So I guess I kind of sum that up into I'm an artist because I think educating is also an art.
definitely.
And my why is because I'm a human at a very, at a very basic level. And I think that's why we're here, is to connect with other humans. You know, you see these, I watched this fascinating TED Talk once about this research that a man had done about ancient humans and how they ran in packs like dogs. You know, so that's our ancestry, is that
Yeah.
we are a pack and we need each other. We need community to find meaning, to find ourselves.
Yeah, and music intertwines with community, just inherently, you think? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like people feel like artistry is a really modern concept, but actually, if you go way back, like some of the first bits of artistry were just putting a swirl on a shell. So you're right. I think that that's just like we are born in a way to try to make beauty out of things. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Not art for art's sake, but art for humanity's sake. Yeah.
I like that. I really do.
Definitely.
Yeah, so, I met you at Elixir of Love, an opera, but I was sort of wondering if operatic singing is really just your core, or do you branch out? What kind of projects have you found yourself doing?
Oh, gosh. I love to do all sorts of different projects. Last Friday, I just shared a project that I'm really passionate about. It's called the Giving Voice Project, Ophelia. And it's a project that I devised with a modern dancer and choreographer.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and so we started talking about the character of Ophelia and how, if we kind of examine her from a 21st century viewpoint, we look at the ways that other characters in the play Hamlet interact with her, and we'd say she was psychologically abused, she's bullied, she's just treated horribly in the show. But I think sometimes we feel like, oh, well, that's like Shakespeare from 400 plus years ago. Like, no, we don't have a connection to that.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our goal, is to look at these female characters from antiquity and go, how are their stories something that we need to share today, or maybe even an antidote to something we're struggling with today.
Yeah.
And in the case of Ophelia, we talk about suicide, and then we also talk about how her gender identity limits what she was able to do and the choices she had access to at that time. And I think that's so relevant today still.
Definitely. Yeah, that's sort of the struggle that I've been having since getting into performing arts that's based on the past more. Like, I mean, opera just...
Oh, yeah. Right.
Its source material is a little on the older side, is I feel like a show is just presented, but then if there isn't any commentary about it, then it's sort of like, what's the point? But then it's like, does that mean you just talk, you have, talk backs or whatever? Or how do you sort of ingrain that with performance, you know what I mean? Because it is one thing to sort of talk about it, then perform it, then talk about it again, but that's not really, I don't know, it's not a smooth combination, where I feel like film has an easier time of sort of integrating that together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think part of what you're speaking to also is the stigma around opera, that you look at the history of it, it was performed for kings and queens. It was it's very aristocratic, sort of high society kind of art form. I don't think that's what it is anymore, but I think that people that haven't experienced it have a preconceived notion that that's what it is. I mean, there's so many modern operas being written all the time that are about contemporary subjects, and I think that's so exciting. But I know what you're saying about how do we connect this historic material, because a lot of the big stage, you know, operas are from at least 100+ years ago. Yeah. And how do we have that that connection? How do we make that? And I really think it's up to all of us, artists, but the whole gamut, not just artists, to stop and say, here's what this is. One of my favorite stories about something like that is the Starbucks baristas. So I used to go to Starbucks every morning, and the friendly baristas would say, hey, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm in an opera. And they're like, well, what is it? You know, they'd never been to an opera. And so we had this wonderful conversation about it. It was Madame Butterfly. And they came to the opera. Yeah. And then the next week, I'm like, well, what did you think? They're like, that Pinkerton is such a jerk. I cannot believe it. Yeah. But that to me was so meaningful, because here were these people that were coming to see this opera that had never had an interest in it before, and then, you know, connected to the story. Yeah. Honestly, that barrier to entrance, I think, is most of the battle. Because most people can appreciate art, like, they can appreciate performance, unless, I guess, they just hate sitting in a seat for a while. There's kind of nothing you can do to get around that if you're trying to get them to an opera. But I mean, actually, even then, you can have it where it's like it's transmitted like on your computer, so we can get past that. That's true. But anyway, I feel like the barrier to just be like, to just hand people tickets, I think they'd go. But then, I mean, economics, you know. Right. But if in an ideal world, we could just like go hand out performance arts tickets, and I think people would show up, like, you know. Yeah. So I find too today, sometimes people are very protective of their time. Yes. Because there's so much demand. It is a currency. Yeah. Exactly. So that's the other barrier, and that's something we tried to accommodate in a way in the Ophelia project, was to say, this is not long. Yeah. You know, just come, and it's a short thing, so we're not asking you for 3 hours of your time. Unlike Faust. Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm thinking ahead to that, and I'm kind of like, well, that's gonna be a lot of time, but it'll be worth it. It will. It will. It's just that we've evolved, you know, and I mean, yeah, people used to sit for way more hours. Well, and you think about what their lives were like and the culture they lived in. That was the event. They didn't have a phone to check in with to see what Cardi B had tweeted, you know? You'd be waiting just, you know, all day. You'd be working all day and then just get to go to a show at night, and that was the event. Only form of entertainment. Exactly. Yeah. So no wonder they wanted 3, 4, 5 hours, you know? Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's escapism. So. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the fact that you do branch out of, or you are still singing, but you combine it with other art forms and collaborate with other artists. So I was sort of wondering if, like, in an ideal world, do you have a dream project, and would that incorporate either other types of media or other art forms? Yeah, I think that's where this last project that I talked about was, that's the type of project I want to do. I want to do a project where I'm working with one or more other art forms to try to tell a unique story, or to share the way I read this story, or to share an autonomous viewpoint or something unique that only I can share. Yeah. And so we have, Jeremy Blair is the name of the choreographer that I work with on the Ophelia project. We have big dreams of applying for grants and trying to, you know, continue this project but add other characters too, and to tie it not just music and art, but music and art with social activism or social justice kind of element. That for me is really meaningful. I remember having this moment being in New York City and waiting outside of an audition room to go in and do an audition. And the woman that was singing before me, I thought, wow, she's singing really beautifully. It sounds great. By the way, everything sounds great through the door. when you're waiting to audition. But no, I thought, man, she sounds really great. And then I had this epiphany, like, if I don't sing this role, if I don't get hired to sing this role, someone else will get hired to sing this role, and they will do a beautiful job at it, because there's so many singers and so many really, really well-trained singers. But I thought, no one else can do the Giving Voice Project Ophelia with Jeremy Blair like I would do it. And so I think that too kind of feeds me to know that I'm trying to give something to the world that I don't think anyone else would give in the same way.
What type of audience do you want? Like, would you, like, what's your ideal audience? Then also, do you invite specific types of audiences to the Ophelia show? Because it seems like it would speak to certain themes that, are really relevant in people's lives, and that might be how they help process, is by going to see the show. Something like that,
Absolutely. Well, I want to share it with as many people as possible. And that is also another really meaningful aspect of this project. So the iteration we did on Friday night was at Outer Spaces, which is such a wonderful venue. So we had this wonderful combination of people in the audience, which included my family members, included people that were there because of their association with Omaha Under the Radar, which was a sponsor of this event. The title of the evening was called Resilience.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did see that. I already saw that title.
You saw that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what we were doing.
Okay.
It was a 2-part series. So there was an event in mid-February, kind of right at the same time as Elixir.
Yeah, so we were just very busy.
I wasn't in that part. Okay. That's why we had to have the second part later. That talks about women in society and their resilience. So the evening started with a poet, Michelle Troxclair. I don't know if you know her, but
is she a local?
She is.
Okay.
She is a really incredible poet and poetry interpreter. And so she opened, so then that brought some different people to the audience. I had some UNO students that were there. Some of them were involved in the performance. And then another woman who came that talked to me and said she just read the title and came up and shared with me that she's a survivor of domestic abuse, and that the description of the event triggered in her, I want to go and see this and connect with people. And then she shared this poem that she wrote about the topic with me. And so I think all of those different people, having all of them in the room at the same time and connecting people that otherwise probably wouldn't be in the same room together for an event like that's not, a huge kind of 1,000 people attendee kind of event. Was really neat. Oh, and then there were some Opera Omaha chorus people that came too, which was really, really fun. And they came because we met in Elixir, and therefore we developed a relationship. So I think that's so much of it is the relationships that you develop with people as an artist, that makes them interested. I find, at least in my experience, it's been less about, here's this topic and y'all come. But part of that also is being your own entity, and honestly, I just don't have the resources to do a lot of my own marketing. It's just something I haven't done as much.
Marketing now is it's so oversaturated, so you have to be going above and beyond to even it's a lot of noise. So I don't know, I think that those relationships are where it's at, and that's what builds that is a community.
Unique and diverse audience.
Do you prefer visceral reactions or cerebral reactions? This is one of my favorite questions because I get very, very different answers from people.
Wow. Well, prefer?
Yeah. Or I guess it could be, what do you tend to get? Like, what projects that you're involved in, what do they tend to get? But I like to know what artists want. Primarily.
From the audience.
Yeah.
Do I want them to have a visceral reaction or a cerebral reaction?
Not to say that there aren't sort of performances that have both, but I think it's interesting to try to separate them.
I do too, because I'm thinking, well, I want them to have an authentic reaction. Mm-hmm. So I guess in my head that equates more to visceral.
Yeah.
I just want them to take the material as it is, take it in, absorb it, and respond.
Yeah.
But for some people, that authenticity may be cerebral.
Yeah.
I find that sometimes for myself as an audience member, if I'm having a cerebral reaction, it takes some of the joy away and some of that authenticity. And so that's something I've worked on as an audience member or also as a teacher, to be able to seek out what's great about what's being offered instead of go, in my head, well, that could be better, this could be that, or that. Because I think you are trained to do that as an artist, too.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And that's an important part of it. But if it becomes all that sort of, all cerebral.
Right now I'm really interested in film analysis. And so it's sort of been this problem where I've watched a lot of video essays and then I go and watch movies and I'm just thinking about the framework of the movie, and that's really taking away from me taking in the film as a whole. Yeah, and so that's sort of been like, I need to find my happy medium again.
Yeah, there's this very famous Martha Graham quote about not blocking your impetus. Not, the world will not have it. There's only one of you and you have to let that out.
Yeah.
And I share that quote with my students a lot, and I think about it a lot myself, because I find that when I go to perform and share, I have to be in that mode. Because if I'm in cerebral mode, then I am blocking.
Yeah.
And that's me personally. But I know what you're saying about responding cerebrally to things. Yes, we have to be able to do that, but it can't be the whole pie.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I feel like it's the difference between like a sweet pie and like a savory pie. Like cerebrals, you want it once in a while, but then sometimes you just want a berry pie or something and you just want to enjoy it and not think about what's in it.
Well, yeah, so I guess the answer to your question is visceral, because I had someone walk up to me after a performance and say, another artist, another singer, say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really needed that. I didn't know I needed that. And I found myself getting lost in what you were doing and not thinking, not thinking about what you were doing. And that was such a gift. So,
because that is something that I feel like you can't find in your daily life as much, maybe. Because like if you're working all day, and I feel like that sort of taps into your non-creative, your non-empathetic side. But then getting to go to a show, I feel like maybe that taps into that. So I don't know.
Oh gosh, that delves into another pool, doesn't it? Is our work only logical and cerebral, and our
it's a whole other
what do we value as a society? Because
not the right thing. That's how I feel.
But I think that your viewpoint is one that most Americans share, right? Yeah. That's like, you go to work to do work things, to do cerebral things, because that's work. Or to do manual things, because that's work, but no, creative things, like, that's play.
That is sort of the way it's framed.
Right.
And I think that's partially due, I think about this a lot as someone who loves the arts, but is also afraid of, like, I'm not afraid of being a starving artist, but I'm afraid of, like, making that leap, is that it depends on what is rewarded by society, and that's rewarded economically, and arts are not rewarded economically. So if tomorrow, I think if we woke up and suddenly the arts were paid 3 times as much as being an IT person, I think you'd see a switch. It's not that people are in love, you know what I mean? Like,
totally.
It's not that people are in love with IT or whatever, and it's, I don't know. I feel like it's an economic reward more so than a social reward, if that makes sense. Society would follow where the money was.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, which is depressing.
Yeah, well, it's capitalism.
Yeah.
And that segues for me into another pet project of mine. I'm starting a blog about finance and finance for artists. Just because I've struggled with that myself, and I think probably every artist struggles with that, because I read a fantastic book about this. You have to read this. Mm-hmm. It's I'm gonna write it down. Oof. The title is something like, I may miss the order, but How to Be an Artist Without Losing Your Mind, Your Shirt, or Your Creative Compass.
Wow, that is quite a mouthful.
Yeah, it's quite a title. The artist is Joanna Nagler.
Okay.
And in it, she hits the nail on the head. She says, you can't be free to make great art if you're worried about where your next meal is going to come from, or you're worried about how you're going to make rent, right?
Yeah.
But on the opposite end of that spectrum, you also can't make great art if you're so stressed out from working so much or from the job that pays your bills. You're also not free to make great art. And so then she goes through in the book and talks about ways to manage your life so that you have more time to be an artist. And she brings up a lot of really interesting points. I think that there are a lot of other ways to approach it, but the models that we see from our culture, from our mentors, from a lot of people is, well, of course you go and you get a full-time job that pays your bills. Yeah. And the other thing that I am obsessed with right now is FIRE. Okay. Have you heard of FIRE? It's an acronym for Financially Independent, Retire Early. There are these fascinating stories. I never knew this existed. I'm so incredibly impressed by it all. Of people that take these jobs where they know they will make a lot of money quickly.
Yes.
Get into six figures very quickly. Mm-hmm. And then they live on about, 20 to 40% of that income.
Yeah.
And then the math shows that if you do that, you live on 20 to 40% of your income, you can amass enough money to live the rest of your life, to live off withdrawals.
Yeah.
After about 10 years.
Yeah. I've heard some of my friends say that they want to do that, but I think they say it jokingly. So it's interesting that that's a real, it's a real lifestyle choice.
No, it really is. Look up the blog Millennial Revolution. She retired by age 31.
Ideal.
Right?
Yeah. Sounds great.
But I think they are excellent examples of other ways that we can think about money, and that we don't have to consume as much as we think we do. Yes, and anyway, sorry, that's like a whole different topic. But
well, I like hearing what artists are thinking about, what they're interested in. So that's fun that you sort of have a
kind of a pet hobby right now. Yeah. I love reading about personal finance. I was so uninterested in it until probably the last 2 or 3 years, and I think what changed it for me was that book that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Because I realized, I'm always trying to find more time to be an artist, to create, to make these projects that I think need to be made and share things that I think need to be shared, but I can't find more time. And so that led to a lot of self-reflection and self-discovery, and realizing that, there is more time, but I have to make different choices in a lot of other ways to make that time available.
Yeah, it feels like that sort of idea of doing a job that pays really well and then getting to fall back on your hobby later. That kind of sounds like the thought experiment about the cookies. Have you ever it's about delayed gratification in children? It's sort of like that. Like they are delaying the gratification.
Yes.
And being very successful at it. Whereas if you are trying to balance everything in the beginning, you just sort of end up failing, and you don't get 2 cookies at the end. You end up with 1 cookie. It's probably oatmeal raisin or something terrible. You're just struggling,
Yeah. No, it is. You're right. It is delayed gratification,
which is hard, but
and there's no guarantees. I think that's the other difficult thing. You could try to retire by the age 31, and you could die at 29, and then you never did any of your pet projects. So I think, at least for me, it's a little more of a balance. I mean, I'm over 31. There's no way I'm going to retire by the time I'm 31.
Maybe by 32.
I'm over 32 also. But anyway, yeah, you know, I think that for me, if I hadn't chose to not care about, I didn't care about making money earlier, like in my 20s. If I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have all the skills I have as an artist.
Sure.
So at that time in my life, that was the most important thing to me, to just be able to make as much music as I can and to become the best artist that I could become. And that's still important to me, but it's just shifted as my life has shifted. I also have a son and husband, you know,
Yeah.
and so my life, my attention for my art is different. One of my favorite conversations about that was a lecture that Libby Larson gave. She's a composer. And she talked about time and flow and how after she had her daughter, she found this sense of deep time where, you know, usually she thinks of time as horizontal.
Yeah.
But where she would have these moments where she just like delve into deep time.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different concept of time and a different way that time works. Like I have 5 minutes to orchestrate this bass line in my next opera or whatever.
Yeah.
And so she'd go into deep time. And I thought about that so much since then. And so I think it does shift for you as an artist, how you balance your entire life. And
yeah, I like that as a concept because I think time isn't linear, and that's scientifically proven, I think. I mean, I haven't done science things in many years, but I think they were basically saying it's not a straight line. So I like that idea. And then also time having more meaning given to it, because I feel like that is what I'm taking from the idea of deep time. Like certain things have more I'm trying to say a word. Gravity? Is that a word?
Gravitas?
That's what I was trying to get to. Thank you. That word. It's like gravity.
It's a good word.
Not quite, but anyway, yeah. So I like that. Like me sitting at my desk, killing time at work is a very different way of experiencing time than me like standing at my piano.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
idea.
I think, I mean, in my head, I feel like I'm being sort of disjunct in what we're talking about today, but also not. You know, it's like this concept of time, I think, drives a lot for artists. Time, finance, and how you structure all your projects within the confines of those things.
I mean, I like this conversation because it is just talking about the industry, and I think that's important too, because we usually end up falling into industry talk whenever I talk to...
Really?
Yeah. It tends to, like, it'll start with what is your process, what is your inspiration, and it will usually end up being what is the industry doing as a whole, where do we fit into it, how do we want to change it, how do we feel about it, you know?
Right.
So it's impossible to get away from.
Well, and I think it's because of what we talked about earlier, because it influences your art and what you think you can do or what you can do.
Yeah.
To such a big degree that it becomes part of the process.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you have to consider it, you know, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can go back to kind of an original question. What is your process? Where do you start? So you have a project, or even back it up further, what do you look for in a project? Then how do you just logistically deal with the music or the conversation? You know, very nitty gritty, but...
Well, I keep notes in my note app on my phone of things that I want to sing. You know, I'll hear a piece and go, oh, wow, that's really compelling. Or sometimes it's a topic, you know, that kind of comes to me. And it's a feeling for me when I get excited about something. And over the years, it's something that I've come to know really well. Like when I have this visceral reaction to something and think, that's something I have to explore more. And I just trust that intuition.
Yeah.
But sometimes with that process, it takes years before that visceral reaction to an idea becomes a project. Have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth? What's her last name?
I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
Okay.
Another book on my list, I guess. Big
Magic.
Magic.
It's so applicable because she does talk about process. And one thing she says is how she believes that she has an idea. It comes to her from the universe. And she'll sometimes speak to it and say, okay, I can't bring you to a realization yet, but don't leave me.
Yeah.
And she also tells a wonderful story in the book about how she had an idea for a book and she believes she passed it to a different author. Mm-hmm. It's very uncanny. So maybe these impetuses really do come from the universe, they're just like sort of out there floating around, like she thinks, or it's a connection to me. It's like I connected to something in the universe and I feel like I have to explore that more.
Yeah.
But then in the process, I think it's interesting how things come to fruition or they don't. And that's just, for me, it just comes through play, and then also trying to be somewhat structured about it. Sometimes I find just giving myself a deadline is the best way, or just setting up the performance and going, well, it has to be done by then. A lot of times you're hired to do a certain job. And in that case, it's maybe a little bit different process because it's laid out for you by other people.
Yeah.
And you know, here's the timeline, here's what's expected of you type of a situation. And it's great to make art that way also. I think for me, when I think about process, I think about the projects that I'm creating myself, like what we talked about earlier with those autonomous projects. But there are a lot of artists that work contract to contract.
Yeah. The hustle.
Wow. They're getting the hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of, for me, what's great about being a teacher. Kind of affords me a little bit more stability in my financial life so that I can then try to explore the projects that I want to take on and not feel like I have to take on every gig that comes my way. Yeah. Every little gig if it's not the right fit.
Well, I have one last question because I know you have to go.
I do.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thank you for being willing to
Of course.
sit down. I literally couldn't have these kinds of conversations by myself. I was sort of wondering, first of all, what sorts of projects thematically draw you in? And then once you have that character or that theme, how do you bring that out in your voice?
So thinking about like Ophelia specifically, well, it is an interesting question because first I'm thinking about being an opera singer and learning a role and how there's so much character in the music that informs, you know, I think you make the music happen as a singer. It's all written in the score and you just have to figure out what all those musical things mean.
Yeah, all the accents.
What the drama is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what is this, you know, what is that? Oh, that's creeping music. Yeah. Okay, you know, those sorts of things. And that's something I love about what I'll call music drama, like opera and musical theater.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
We have like all of these clues, and then, but how do you bring out all of that? Ooh, well, that takes a lifetime, right? To try to figure out what you can express with your voice.
Sure.
And I think that's part of why I wanted to become a singer, because I knew that my work would never be done. Mm-hmm. My husband says that he thinks I wanted to become a singer because it's the only thing anyone told me I couldn't do.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I was the same way. Very stubborn.
Yeah. I'm very stubborn. But no, I think it's because I had things to say.
Yeah.
And
do you think that like voice is a particularly unique way to do it? Like why do you think voice is maybe better not better, you know what I mean?
Just different?
Yeah, how does it set it apart from other artistic voices, as it were?
It is your instrument. It's housed in your body. You know, it's very different from, I used to play clarinet. It's very different from that. If I have a bad day on the clarinet, I can blame my reed. I can you know, I can get a new instrument if I don't like the way this one sounds.
Yeah.
But as a singer, you can't. You're so vulnerable because your instrument is you. It's a part of you. And so therefore, I think the things that we can express as a singer are, I have to be careful. I don't want to be disrespectful to any other instrument, but
everything has a unique way, but
it's just, maybe more unique or more autonomous.
I feel like in a way it's more human.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
that's actually that's a much better way to say it, because it is.
Yeah, it's like very.
But it is more human. And there are a lot of instruments that seek to imitate the human voice, and I think that's why. And I think also it's so interesting because our instrument has a brain connected to it. I mean, of course, if you're playing the cello, your brain is connected to the way you're moving your arm, but it's not physically changing the acoustic chambers in your instrument, And so I read something once about a very interesting article about how it's not just the physical larynx and surrounding area and, pharynx, all of that is your instrument, but also it's so much informed by the type of thinking that you do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what makes it very unique, and that we have so many colors, so many things so many different ways that we can express. And I just think the human voice is spectacular. It's marvelous. It's so incredible that those two little vocal folds
can do so much.
They can
evoke so much.
Yeah.
That seems like a really good place to end. Yeah.
I think, totally.
Yeah.